Welcome to the Life Career Roadmap channel. And today I have a special guest from Sydney, Lorena Oliveira. Welcome, Lorena.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Lorena, my first question to my guests is where you come from and what's your professional background?
I come from Brazil, from South Brazil, from a town called Curitiba, which is in our Guarani original indigenous language, means a land of a lot of pine trees. So we have,
Mm.
it's endemic to our region, so they're very famous in Brazil. And my professional background, so I'm an engineer. I study sanitary and environmental engineering in Brazil.
Okay, so let's go back a little bit in time. And I would like to ask you, when did you decide that this engineering, environmental engineering, would be your profession?
I guess it was a bit of a journey, but growing up in Brazil, my grandma had a house by the coast, and we spent a lot of time with my grandma. And we were on boil water, and they also had septic tanks, and we realized, like everyone knew, like you couldn't drink the water, for example. And in some of the areas around were more populated areas, sometimes like you couldn't go swim. You have like the same as the beach watch, I guess, in Australia, where the water will be polluted. So, swimming wasn't permitted. So I guess that made me really aware of the issues that lack of sanitation brings, and deciding what to study. Sanitary engineering really sounded like, there's a problem, let's solve it. And that's the way to do it. So yeah, I guess that's the way to summarize it.
So, but let me ask you something, because now I'm curious. You are so aware of what was happening around you. How old were you when you realized that things are just going to the wrong way, that should not be that way, and you could do something to help? So you were little?
Yeah, as little. And I guess growing up, my mom, she's a biologist, and she would say, oh, when we were kids, used to come and swim in this little river. And we were told, go around it, or don't, even don't step on it. So I just grew up with that understanding. And, we were very conscious about, what was going on around us. And originally I wanted to follow my mom's footsteps. But then, as I researched a bit more, I felt engineering was more of a proactive choice, in that sense that in my mind I want to build things, and I want to get everything sorted. And now being this profession for a long time, I understand that the engineering and science, they're all deeply connected, and there's no like a real hard line in between. But at that time that sounded like the best way to get everything sorted.
That's right. So, and by that time, how popular was environmental engineering? Because now it's something that we hear a lot.
Mm.
But before, uh, how was that?
So that's an interesting question. So the course I studied was originally created in the 70s in Brazil, when the government realized the sanitation problem. So they created around the country 5 of the federal public universities to provide that course, sanitary engineering course, free of charge, like our public universities in Brazil. And as time progressed, the interest in that course kind of dwindled a little bit. So they, and also I guess the scope of the sanitary engineering changed a little bit as well. So they incorporated sanitary and environmental engineer to attract more people, but also to do a little bit more of that holistic approach around, managing the natural assets, and how does the nature interact with the, treatment plants and all of it. So it became a larger scope. So that is interesting, because that was becoming more popular at the time, and that's the reason they changed the course name. And I don't know, I think, yeah, it's still very popular, environmental engineering, and I don't even know if they even have sanitary engineering in Australia. But yeah, it's just one of those
Yeah, it's like industrial
historic things.
engineering, right? In Australia, they don't have the industrial engineer as strong as you have back in South America.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's funny because I am from Manaus, right? So the other side of this
Yeah, yeah,
country, and
yeah,
we didn't have environmental engineer there or any
yeah. Okay.
sanitary. I cannot remember as a
No,
because
I think
it
it
was
was
very
Bahia,
popular
São Paulo.
because Yeah, it was very popular. The civil, mechanical
Yeah,
engineering,
that's right.
but not the specific other ones. We didn't have much, so it was
Yeah,
different. And,
yeah.
and then, so you studied, and then you start working in Brazil. How was your professional journey, leaving the university and find employment in
So
this
as
country?
Yeah, yeah. So as part of our course, you have to do an apprenticeship or something like internship. I don't know what you call it,
Mhm.
before you graduate. So I ended up finding employment in São Paulo. So I studied in Florianopolis in the south,
Yes.
and then moved to São Paulo to work working for a big consulting firm there as a undergrad, and then when I finished, then ended up staying as a graduate engineer working there. So that's interesting. And then I did my final project as part of that, and in uh, Rio, what is it called? And it's a small area in the south of Rio de Janeiro state. So I used to travel there to do the final project, but working in São Paulo during the
Yes. So
weekdays.
this was
Yeah.
your first journey as migrating from where you were to come to a bigger, let's say, world. Because leaving Curitiba to go to work in São Paulo, it's a big
Yeah.
step too, right?
Well, I left Curitiba to study in Florianopolis when I was about
Okay.
17 or 18. So that was a big shock to the system. And then when I moved to São Paulo, so yeah,
Oh,
it's a big city. Yeah, completely
yes.
different. Yeah.
So, and when the idea of migrating to Australia, have you migrated to any other country, or Australia was the country that you came first outside of Brazil?
It was Australia. So it was a bit of I don't know if it's a coincidence or what it is, but so when I was working at this consulting in Sao Paulo, we were doing a couple projects. They were funded by the World Bank and Japanese International Cooperation Agency. So two facts in that. So one, the project manager was from Japan, and he spoke, excellent Japanese, as you can imagine, but English as well. So I didn't speak any English, so that made it very difficult. The other aspect, one of the projects was some water quality modeling. And the model was developed by the University of Western Australia. So the team had a lot of engagement with the University of Western Australia. But again, I didn't speak English. So that started to become, a very clear barrier to professional development and my ability to, control my work even. Like I had to get somebody to translate things, for example. So that, I guess, sparked the idea of, I really want to learn English and going to study English once a week or something. I know that's going to take forever. So the best thing is to go and study for 6 months, for example. So that, and then where to go. So, looking at a few factors like Canada or America. So the factors of cost, visa, I guess, lifestyle, all became part of the considerations. And Perth seemed like a really good fit because of the weather. And, it's not a very big town, but it's also not a small town. That's where the UWA was. So it had, I had some understanding already. Yeah, so basically that's how I ended up in Perth. Yeah.
So when you came that time by yourself, or you had already a family that you came along together?
No, I just came with my boyfriend at the time. We didn't know anyone here, but we did meet quite a lot of Brazilians and other people as we started study. So that, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So and then you moved here. Now let's talk about all the things that on the way. So you plan to come, you decide to come to Perth for all the reasons that you listed before. But despite the planning that you have put together, did everything work as you planned?
Well, it never does exactly how you plan, right? Things are always a little bit more difficult. I think when you start the journey, you think like, oh, I'm just going to buy my ticket and apply for a visa, and you realize the scrutiny that you have to amount of paperwork and prove financial independence and a lot of things that seem quite overwhelming. And you're like, how do I get through all this paperwork, provide all this evidence? They have to do like medical and, like some crazy vaccines that for, diseases that never even existed in the towns where I lived. But, the vaccination mandate, like yellow fever, for example, you have to go through all of that stuff to be able to. So it's just, I guess, a bit more complicated than what I expected. But it worked out, I guess. Once you, I guess, understand the reality, then you adjust your expectations, and yeah, so it's not as
But
fast as.
But then you came, then did your studies. And when was the point that you decided to stay and be here, working here, living here?
Right. So when I came originally it was for 6 months, and I think halfway through studying English every day, and working a couple of restaurants, and I know to just keep surviving, and I realized it's probably going to take me a lot longer than 3 months to be able to be proficient in English, right? To meet my expectations. So at that time, I realized I wanted to stay a bit longer. So I was going to extend my course to a full year, studying English at TAFE, and then working extra. I think at
Yeah.
one point I was working at 3 or 4 restaurants just to make up the hours, right? Shifts, to save money for that additional 6 months and everything. But during that time, I was lucky enough that came, I guess there was a lot of skill shortages in WA, and in my studies, and as a young engineer, became very proficient with AutoCAD, and then I got a contract with SKM at that time for as a design drafter for about, I think it was a 4-year contract or something like that. So it never was, I think, an informed decision. I'm going to stay here forever. It's just one thing led to another. I'm like, oh, this will be a really good professional thing to have. And in my mind, I think I always thought I was going to do that a little bit and go back to Brazil. But then, I end up, making friends. I met my husband and the rest.
It's
So
an amazing
yeah,
life.
that's right. And it just keep, and I think even as a young couple thinking, we're going to go back, and then things happen, and it just, become more attached to your life here. And, yeah, so I don't think, if I can think of a conscious decision, like I'm going to stay on Australia forever, it probably took a few years to get
Yes.
there. Yeah.
So, having this first job that you had, what was the process for you then to become the environmental engineer in Australia? Because you had a degree. So,
Hmm.
did you recognize your degree, or you just went to a skills assessment? What was your process?
So that was a working visa, and I did that. I can't even remember if it was 2 or 3 years. And then that engagement finished. I think I had my first kid, so it was probably maybe on a year between jobs. And then I finally was really lucky. There was a opening at Water Corporation for a recycled water engineer. And at that time, I already had my permanent visa. So I end up never even recognizing my degree. I think that I just provided my resume, and I had a good discussion about my skills and experience. Obviously, I had translated my degree. Like you have, it's not the Engineers Australia pathway, but it's the what is it called? Is something with the Western Australian Government Education Department, that they confirm that this is real and this is equivalent. So they end up saying there's equivalent to a civil engineering degree major with a specialization in environmental engineering or something like that. So I did all that part and translated all my academic transcripts and all of that to get through that. So at least to validate that, I didn't make up
Yes, that's right.
my
Make
degree.
sure.
Yeah. And
Oh,
yeah, so that was a really great opportunity. And yeah, then after that, worked 10 years at Water Corporation in many different roles. Yeah.
yeah. So when I met you, you just had moved to Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. So you're still very engaged working with water, but now not with Water Corporation in WA, but now New South Wales. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So they were recruiting for the role of water quality or manager water quality here, and they found me on LinkedIn, and they sent me the job description and said, "Would you be interested in this?" I was working with water quality at that time in WA, and it seemed like a really exciting opportunity. And having already had some friends in Sydney, it was a really good fit for our family as well. So a few things worked out, and that's how we migrated.
So that's why my next question regarding the family moving to Sydney, because Perth is a city that we feel like home, right? It's flat, not much flat, but it's, you go everywhere and you see everything, right? And going to Sydney, full of many roads and everywhere. So everything is so distant.
That's right.
Big city, like it's a big city.
Yeah.
And how was for your family and your kids to adapt from the community in Perth to become community in Sydney? In Sydney?
Um, so I had at the time I think a 12-year-old and a 4-year-old. Can't keep track anymore. So for the little one was not too much difference.
Too much,
Um,
right?
yeah, for the 12-year-old, they're going to high school. So they're, oh, I know, I'm excited. It sounded, maybe I think we underestimated the impact. And I think once we moved, the reality kicked in. So for her, it was a bit of a difficult adjustment. I guess missing friends, missing that routine that, we'd lived in the same home for a long time. And we had, friends coming over every weekend. And so I think it was a bit of a shock. And then now she's, has a very strong community and very well established here. And I don't think she would ever leave. But it is, it was a bit of a challenge at the beginning. I think I maybe underestimated the impact, and just took her word for saying, "Oh yes, I want to go. I'm excited." And okay, like being optimistic.
Yes, yes. And so you have been working like most of your time now for the government, right? For
Mhm,
state government. And
mhm.
would you think about the difference? What do you point as a difference between working in a different environment like the sector, public sector, and working in corporate sector in this field that you work in? So you see any big difference, or you see more the relationship between cooperation that we can do?
We do a lot of work with private business, like as consultants, and what we do. And I think the main difference is the our drivers and the way we are regulated. So even though I work for a state-owned corporation, we have to be our work is focus on our customers, like outcome for our customers, rather than being a business. Like we have business principles, of course, because we have to be a sustainable business, but we have customer front of mind, in a sense that the population, the broader consideration of that compared to a private business. But I don't know if there'll be difference around. I guess the difference of projects and scope. We have very defined role as a state-owned corporation and what our responsibilities and what we are obliged to do. And as I guess, private business, you probably have a lot more flexibility to do a lot of different things.
Yes. Why I ask this question is because when I see newcomers, they normally say, I'd like to work for the government. And I ask them, do you know the structure of government in Australia, how things work in Australia? And mainly they come with the idea uh, from back home, right?
Oh,
Working
yeah,
in government. So, and explaining the system is a bit different,
very
and
different.
even the application for the job is different,
Yes.
and everything, and for them to know, have the information before they decide that is the government that I want to work for, and then go
Mm,
there and they expect to do more things they
yeah.
can't, or not doing much, but they need to, right? So
Mm,
it's explained to them that is a different system in Australia. Government has a different structure that probably where they
yeah.
come from, and it's much better to understand to be able to decide if they want. There's nothing wrong. If you want to go to government, go test if you like. If you don't, you are free to go to the other side, but be aware that is a bit different from where you come from, probably. Yes.
Yeah, from an employment perspective, I think it's not that different from a private company. We operate very similar rules, the Fair Work Australia and all of that. It might have enterprise agreement and everything, but the work rules, I guess, are pretty similar. And working government is so it's very demanding. There's a lot of work for us to do, and we have
Right.
to be very mindful of resource because it's all public funds. So it's a lot of pressure and consideration. So it's, I guess, for people, rather than deciding government or private, is more what do they want to do? Where do they see how much diversity they want, or do they like to work in specific areas that some of, because of the water supply, the way it's set up, you have to normally work for government in Australia to be doing some of that, more some of those roles. So it's more deciding what they want to do. And again, there are even private companies that play around the water supply space. So yeah, I don't think it's from a work perspective that's a lot of
Yeah.
difference. Yeah.
I believe it's more, as you said, more what drives the person to do,
Yeah.
right? Because I had people in the past that came to me, said, oh, I went to the government thinking that was something that I could do, but I can't. I don't like the system. Or they said, I love the system. I want to be there. So it's just
Yeah.
knowing what is possible for them to do with their contribution, right?
Yes,
Some people want to do more hands-on and having decisions on their hands,
that's
and
right.
probably it's something that they need to think about when you
Yeah.
go to a
and,
big
and we
corporation.
are still, that's right, and we're still businesses that will have, our strategic directions, we have priorities, and we have our values. So it's really understanding what they are, and if see if they're aligned with your own values, and see if you can see that vision, because then you feel like you're part of that business. It doesn't matter if it's private or government. I think that's one of the key criteria that people should consider, is that aligned with my career objectives, but also my values, and that they reflect them. Yeah.
Yeah, and coming to that as well is because normally what I say to people when come to me is it's not that job that you change is your savior in Australia, but what you do after you get that job, how
Mm,
you feel when you are working for that company in that position, right?
that's
So
right.
because if you still not able to communicate well, if you're not able to feel that you are part of the company, the team, the job, you can earn a lot of money. You can have the status, the position status, but if you don't feel that is aligned with you, that you feel that you're not part of it, maybe become a problem for you. So
That's right.
the decision of what I want to do from now on and where I want to go with my journey, right?
That's right. And what you, yeah, exactly. Is having that attitude and saying, when I came to Australia, that I told you that I was working like in multiple restaurants, like I learned so much. It was so much hard work by having to deal with people, having to, smile all the time. When sometimes you just want to strangle somebody. It just, so every job will teach you something. Is also looking from that lens. Is like, it's not what I'm getting, financially, but there's so many things that, you can learn, and then you have to give it back.
Yeah,
You might
that's
just say.
right. And remember that people come after you because you went through that, and there are other people that are coming to get the same job that you did once,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
And it's understanding that being understand that people are there and they need you, and they come to you and ask you something. Be open to help others too, not just
Yeah.
I've done, it's done, and I'm not there anymore. Now there are people that are coming after you and to do the
That's
things that you left. So to things continue, it's a cycle, right? So
right.
anyway,
Correct. Correct.
so, and Lorena, if if you think about let's say you have been very blessed having your career set up here in Australia. So, when you think about the struggles where many people, because now we have plenty of jobs available, and plenty of people without jobs, and they are skills, they have the qualifications, and they are crazy to get a job to read to work and show that they can contribute. So what would you tell to people that are here in Australia struggling to get a job in their field, the newcomers? What would be your advice or suggestion that they could take and say, yes, this is something that I haven't thought before and I can do?
I'm not sure I can give any advice on something that people haven't thought before. I think everybody, or I hope everybody is aware that there is, and I think it's unintentional, but um, there is a lot of misconception that, if you are from a place like Brazil, your education is not as good, or your qualification are not, and we can't get automatic recognition, for example. So your qualifications is not as good. And I had people telling me this: oh, you have to understand that your degree from Brazil is not the same as a degree from Australia, without any really understanding of, about the course that I did, about the quality of it, or any of it. It's just unintentional, maybe a bit of misconception, right? So I guess my advice for people is just not expect everything will be the same. So it's challenging, right? And you're going to face challenges, and everybody does in different ways. And for migrants, that can manifest, quite in certain circumstances. But majority of people are understanding, and and the good thing in Australia, there's a lot of migrants as well, so they understand those barriers. So I think two things is that find a way to get your foot in the door. So don't expect, like I didn't expect to come here and potentially have the same job I had in Brazil. So you have to prove yourself, right? That is, I guess, expected. But the other thing is try to find people that will support you. So I was lucky enough to find, had many managers, colleagues, and in my current work, but before, that will support you and they believe in you. So those are the people that you have to ally yourself with, and go from there, because you can't remove all the barriers. Sometimes you just go around.
That's right. The barriers are there, are many, all right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, and for someone, as you had planned before coming to Australia, but then you plan to go move to Sydney. So, if someone is outside of Australia wanting to come to Australia, what suggestion or advice would you give them that you have learned through your journey?
I guess it would be doing a little bit of, the research, having understanding of, if you're coming here to migrate for work, have that clear understanding. What are the market conditions? What are some potential jobs? It doesn't hurt. Sometimes you might reach out to some places where you would like to work. And, some people might respond to you, and try to understand, are they looking for people with your skills? What will your resume stack up? Because I find a lot of the times people even feel that, that first step, and, chase opportunities, because sometimes they're not going to come to you. So don't be afraid to send requests and send your resume, and, ask people for feedback, for example. So I think if you're considering coming here, try to reach out to people that have that experience. That will probably make your journey a lot easier than you having to try to figure out everything on your own. Now, there's many people that have been there before.
Yes.
So
Yes.
tap into that, and I guess that would probably save a lot of time and effort. Yeah.
Yes. So the other thing, you came to study English, and then you realized at that point that you need more time to be proficient and able
Mhm.
to speak well and communicate well. And many people think also that before they come to Australia, it would be very easy, right? It's like this way. I learned English in 6 months. 6 months, I have the job of my life, and my life changed. So, how long took you to be able to get enough English, or a level of English that would give you that job, your first job?
I mean, my first job, because I was a design drafter, the profession, the engineering job, as a waitress, even I was mostly running, just taking food to the table and taking the plates, because my English wasn't good enough to take orders, for example. Yeah, that's right. So I think it's a good year before you even have that capability, depending on the job. Is as a design draft, there was more, because to me it was really much easier to understand. But at the first job, I got the end of the Alliance Award, like, quiet achiever. And I'm like, oh my goodness, because I was nervous about, talking, and maybe embarrassed about, the way mistakes. And I've been here for so long, and I still learn words. You talk to sometimes in my colleagues, like, I never heard this word before. So I'm
Especially
still
the kids,
learning.
right? As well.
Right. And make a lot of mistakes. And I think I'm much more comfortable, and have the realization that my English is never going to be perfect. I'm not a native speaker, right? There's some things that I just make no sense to me, and they never will. But I'm comfortable with that. Like, I own that space, and I'm not worried about that anymore. Before, that caused me a lot of nervousness, even with public speaking, even, being here talking to you, that would have been, I still get nervous, but I'll be like sweating and losing sleep, because I'll be so worried about the mistakes. And I don't know if you experience this, but people sometimes would assume that you're not as intelligent because of your language is not perfect. So they equate that to your ability to, do other tasks, or your level of, emotional and technical capability, right? And that is, again, unintentional, but it was something that, to me, before, I was very aware, and it made me very nervous. So I wanted to be perfect, and I'm like, I just gave up. I'm happy. I'm gonna
Well,
learn
I
new
have
words.
right now. I can move forward.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but I think it's a good 2 years before I felt comfortable, you know,
Yes. Okay.
expressing myself. Yeah.
Yes. So, and then one thing that I say to people, if you come to Australia, don't expect to be just speaking in your own language. So you need to invest in
Yes.
learn and practice the English, because if you stay only with people that speak the same language as you from back home, you will not grow. So you
Oh,
need
definitely not.
your time to, you don't need to leave your friends behind, but
Yeah,
make a timetable. This time here is for my friends with from the same language, but the other time is for English improvement. So yeah,
that's right. If you're sharing, a home or something like that, try to be with people from other countries as well, and all of that
that's
helps because then that's a force that you're there, and you're going to make conversation with people that would understand. They'll have patience, and like at other English students and everything from other countries, that can be really helpful because then you're also not so self-conscious, about.
that's right. So the other
Yeah.
thing is now your kids do the reverse migration because you now bring them to Brazil.
Mm.
How is the experience of bringing your kids that were born here, grew up with you speaking Portuguese or having the culture or Brazilian culture probably in your house, like food or music. So going back to Brazil with them, how you see their reaction or perceptions of the two cultures?
I think they just love going to Brazil. Is the family, is the feeling. I think they feel quite at home. To be honest, my oldest daughter, she speaks quite Portuguese quite well. The little one, not so much. I think because of COVID, also the impact. My mom normally comes to stay a long time, and that he missed on that. And my husband doesn't speak. He understands very well Portuguese. He knows when me and my sister are talking about him. He But we speak English mostly at home, and I'll speak to my kids, a mix. So we need to catch up a little bit. But I think they feel quite at home in Brazil and understand differences. Sometimes some of the things are a bit more confronting. That you see in Brazil, the poverty, some of the issues that we have there that we don't have here, like around safety. Now you don't have here, but it's more accentuated there. But I don't know. I think they just love it. Yeah. I think they can't wait to go back. Yeah.
That's so wonderful. So, do you miss any food from Brazil, or what's your favorite dish from Brazil?
So, I mean, miss all the food. All I do when I go there is eat, right? But
Yes,
my husband's a very good cook, so he learned all the Brazilian recipes. So he does the black beans, he does a palmito pie, he does everything. And then we found a place around here that sell coxinhas and
that's right.
the cheese bread. So we do eat a lot of Brazilian food, and even cassava flour and all of that is all staple at home. But there's some things that you can't find. So yeah, we do eat a lot.
So,
A lot of pastel.
pastel, that's right. So, when you remember like the memory of
Oh,
childhood, that food that is so
uh-huh.
yummy.
With the
So,
caldo de cana. Yeah.
caldo de cana. Yes, that's right. So,
You can find in Sydney, but it's not. Yeah, it's not. I think it's becoming more popular. Some of those like boost juice type of thing that they now have that.
it's very
Yeah,
common in Asia as well. It's a part of Asia, so I think it's
yeah,
become more yeah. So I
yeah.
remember pastel de feira com caldo de cana.
Oh, so good. I'm hungry. Yeah, and then that's the part that is hard, and it's not even just the food, is the environment, like being at the theater and having that food and going your weekend, fruit shopping or whatever it is. That there's so many things that you miss. It's like you love Australia, but you still love your home country, so you almost feel like you're always divided. And there's always the saudades that is hard to. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. So Lorena, was wonderful talking to you here and learning about your journey, and thanks for sharing your journey. So anything else that would like to say as the final touch here for this chat for people that are
No, no.
listening to you?
No, that was fun. Thank you so much for having me. Definitely a pleasure to be here, and I'll look forward to catching up with you again.
Yes, so thank you very much. So for you that watched my chat with Lorena, thank you very much. Remember to subscribe to the channel and see you next time. Bye-bye.